the fact that they are still 7 and 8th in line to the throne is quite extraordinary, really. And you never know, one day they might actually be called into action of some degree. They might move up the scale. So it's all hanging a bit by a thread. And I think when they get older, they're going to start asking questions and say, how did it come to this? That that we haven't got a relationship with our grandparents and with the royal family. So and with our, in particular with our uncle and with our cousins.
Well, do you think Harry's doing enough? I mean, he doesn't have a home in the UK. I mean, surely he could bring the children over to.
Well, he had opportunities recently, didn't he, on his way to the Invictus Games event, but. And Nigeria, Meghan didn't want to know. That's twice now that she's just stopped off at the airport at Heathrow, I think, in the lounge there. She clearly thinks that she's unpopular in this country. I don't think she wants to come back to this country. It wouldn't surprise me if she never came back to this country, to be honest. And I think that's where we are. It's very, very sad. But there must be some moments in the middle of the night where Harry's lying there thinking to himself, has this really been worth it? And is there something I could have done differently?
Yeah. Talking of birthdays, so the Conservative Party, obviously there's a general election being called in the UK, which means there are very few royal events at the moment. Yeah. But one of the flagship policies, Rishi Sunak, Conservative leader, suggested that all 18-year-olds could do or should do national service. So there will be a few members of the younger royals that are a little bit nervous about turning 18. Now, we have done a poll, Royal Exclusive on The Sun have done our first ever poll where we have asked viewers and readers of The Sun whether young royals should be made to do national service if this policy ever comes into action. And I think the results are a staggering 88% believe that the younger royals should do national service. That's not really surprising, though, is it? Because the royals have a long history with serving in the armed forces, from William and Harry.
Yeah, there's a long tradition of service. It was quite interesting a couple of years ago. There was a story that was leaked, attributed to a friend of Prince William, saying that he and Kate didn't want to put George under any pressure and they wouldn't make him go into the services if he didn't want to. I don't think they wanted a situation where a repeat of Prince Edward, who of course famously went into the Marines for a few months and then had to quit. So that was very embarrassing. And also, Prince William has written and spoken about mental health issues and how people shouldn't be made to do service if they're not really cut out for it. So it's quite interesting that this subject has now come up. Of course, if the polls are the same people telling us that Labour are going to sweep to power, this is all a bit academic because if the Tories don't get in, this isn't going to happen. But I suspect that when it comes to it in 8, 10 years' time, 15 years' time, by that time, he'll have grown up a lot, George, and it wouldn't surprise me if he wants to do royal service in the armed forces. He volunteers for it himself. So I don't think he'll have to be made to do it. I think he'll want to do it, probably.
If Harry and Meghan ever came back, I mean, as you very pointed out, we don't think we'll ever see Meghan on these shores again. No. That could put Archie in line, or Lilibet,
Yes, I don't think we can make an American citizen do armed forces service for us, but so I don't think that's going to happen. But no, this is one of the strange things. A lot of people think that they should be stripped of their line of succession position. I can sympathise with that. It's not easy to do. It needs all sorts of protocol to be done, but. If things get a lot worse, they seem to be calming down a little bit at the moment, but if they launched another series of attacks on the royal family, then the pressure might build up to take action, to strip them of the titles and strip them of that. But I don't think the king wants to make the situation worse. He doesn't want to provoke them, and he is still hoping at some point for a reconciliation. So I don't think anything will happen soon.
That's a really interesting point because there is a lot of chat about a lot of people claiming that the king could take them out of the line of succession or strip them of their titles. And it's been notable, and I do say this a lot, it has been notable that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, have calmed down a little bit. They aren't throwing so many insults. Do you maybe think that because they've looked further down the line and thought that could be some kind of punishment that was on offer?
I think they've got, well, you know more about this than I do, Matt, but they've got new PR people. I mean, if they listen to their PR people, and sometimes people don't listen to their PR people, but if they listen to their PR people, I'm sure they're telling them that, yeah, right, you've made your point, you had Spare, you had Netflix, you had the Oprah Winfrey interview, you've got it all off your chest. Now's the time to row back a bit and try and build some bridges or at least create a life for yourself. And obviously the Nigeria trip, they were trying to do that. The jury's out as to whether that was a good idea. I mean, some people called it a sort of quasi-royal tour, and I'm not sure that the palace would have been particularly happy about it. But we can't stop them doing these things if they want to. But it's now time for them really to focus on positive things and not just keep slagging off the royal family.
Yeah, I think they are trying, but you talk about their team. I'm constantly interested in who they have around them, because Prince William and King Charles, they would have a private secretary, they would have a team, they would have a team that links into the Foreign Office or to embassies overseas. Harry and Meghan don't have that. So if they were, you mentioned about Nigeria, so if they were potentially, that we hear that they might want to go on more tours without they might have a good PR team or have a PR, people spinning everything good that they are doing when they go on these tours. They need private secretary systems. They need staff that can help them on the ground, link up with embassies, link up with other with the government and the Foreign Office and stuff like that. That's something that concerns me going forward.
Yeah, I mean, they could very easily have blundered into some kind of political problem in Nigeria. I mean, all right, Charles isn't head of state in Nigeria, but it's obviously a very important country, very prominent member of the Commonwealth. So, there is a danger that they could easily blunder into some sort of diplomatic incident if they make the wrong moves and get blamed almost as if they are royals, even though they're not representing the royal family. So it's a difficult one, but they're playing to a global audience. They're not just playing to the Commonwealth or to the British public. In fact, the British public's probably the last thing on their mind. They're playing to their audience in America, around the world, and that's what they're going to concentrate on.
Yeah, 100%. When we opened, Phil, I explained obviously that you've been working in the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
And what I love to hear, and we have discussed stuff like this in the past, but what I love to hear is some old interaction with royals and old kind of events. So going back to your early days when
Yes.
you were reporting for The Sun,
Yes.
what kind of leaps out? What would you tell your grandchildren? What's the ones that you bore people down the pub with?
Lots of things leap out. I mean, obviously, I was very lucky to be in an era when we were following Diana around the world, Charles and Diana. And we didn't just go on royal tours, we went on their holidays as well. So we went to all the ski trips and the Virgin Islands.
I'm not interrupting you, but you weren't invited on those holidays, were you?
No, we weren't invited, no, but it was kind of, that we came to a sort of tacit agreement where we'd take some photographs on the first day and then theoretically we left them alone. But we had to stay in the ski resort to make sure that there were no sort of problems. So it was like a sort of free ski holiday, really. But anyway, it was, but to be serious, I mean, some of the iconic moments that I was with her, I always remember in Brazil. We went to Brazil, and at the time she was very much doing this campaign about AIDS, and she picked up an AIDS baby in an orphanage in Sao Paulo, and even some of my hard-bitten colleagues were in tears, but the nurses were in tears because they'd never had anyone like this. There was this stigma about AIDS at the time, so it was really groundbreaking. And to be there when she was doing some of this stuff was looking back on it was quite historically important. So stuff like that stands out. I mean, funnily enough, one of the greatest pinch me moments I had was when I was covering Princess Anne, and she was the first royal in sort of modern times to go to Moscow when the Berlin Wall had come down and Gorbachev was in power. And I was lucky enough to to draw the short straw as the person who had to go into the Kremlin. And cover the event, and it was an incredibly boring event. Actually, it was all they did was talk about the weather, if I seem to remember. But I stood there in the office of the president of Russia, or president of the Soviet Union at the time, Gorbachev, in his office, and I'm thinking to myself, not many people get to do this. This is probably where Putin now sits, and so it was quite a remarkable moment, and not many people can say that. So this job does, as you know, takes you to some amazing places, and and enables you to do some incredible things that you wouldn't otherwise do.